This is Business Incorporated. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago. On the program today, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation secures joint venture to cover the more than 700 million cost of developing new oil fields in its southern Niger Delta energy hub. And Tanzanian government submits 3 bills to allow it force mining and energy companies renegotiate their contracts. Plus, holders of Mozambique's sovereign dollar bonds under the umbrella of Global Group of Mozambique bondholders criticize the government for honoring guarantees on loans given to state-owned firms. We get started now with the markets, and being the last trading day of the month and the end of the second quarter, investors at the Nigerian stock market are taking profit today. At intraday, the all-share index was down 1.29%, but it's not so at the market in South Africa, as the Johannesburg Stock Exchange was looking up 0.44% at intraday. The market in Egypt was closed yesterday and, of course, today, but it last traded on Wednesday down 0.16%. Kenya was down on Thursday 0.17%. In the Middle East, markets are closed today. However, stocks were mixed on Thursday, with banks in the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait generally weak despite a strong performance by their global counterparts. In Abu Dhabi, the only lender that rose was Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, which added 0.1%. Union National Bank fell 1.7%, and First Abu Dhabi Bank declined 1.4%, dragging the index 0.55% lower. The Dubai index rose 0.38% as real estate-related shares were the most active. Builder, Drake and Skoll was the most heavily traded stock, and it fell 1.1%, but its peer, Arab Tech, jumped 4.4%, recovering from an 8.5% tumble on Wednesday. Markets in Qatar and Saudi Arabia did not open at all this week owing to Eid al-Fitr's celebration. And in Europe, bourses there were higher during mid-morning trade on Friday, as major central banks suggested the era of cheap money may be coming to an end. And for more on the market, let's bring in Conrad Busen, my colleague in Frankfurt, to give us details. Hello, Conrad. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming through.
Hey, Timmy. Happy Friday.
Same to you. Thank you. Now, the Eurozone's annual rate of inflation fell for the second straight month in June to its lowest level in 2017. Is this seen as a setback for the European Central Bank as its stimulus programs enter a 4th year?
Well, it sure underlines that the road to recovery is a bumpy one, or the return to normal times, where business activity creates higher prices. This consumer price inflation of only 1.3% is surely far away from what the European Central Bank has in mind when it thinks about price stability. But if we take a bit of a closer look on this inflation data, I think it becomes clear that there is no reason to be concerned. The decline of inflation happened because of a steep decline of energy prices. The energy price inflation fell from 4.5% to just about 2%. If we don't count that in, and if we look at the core inflation rate, this still increased from 0.9% to 1.1%. So the European Central Bank has no reason to be concerned about deflation. The trend is upwards, and in the long run, of course, this means for the European Central Bank that it will have to do about its super loose monetary policy. Not for the moment, though. It's still not the time yet because, as I said, the inflation is way below 2%.
Now, Conrad, yesterday you talked about Delivery Hero. That's the IPO, the long-awaited IPO of that company, of course, took place today in Frankfurt. This is the biggest IPO of a tech company in 3 years. How did it go?
It went very well, Chimi. The share price the shares were offered at the higher end of the price range that was taken into consideration before the IPO. They came in at €25.50, and since the first minute of trading today, this share price has continued to rise. Currently, at the moment, as we speak, those shares are traded at more than €27.30. That's nearly €2 increase of this share price on the first trading day, and it of course means that this was quite a success, this IPO. That's very good news, not only for this company, not only for one of its largest shareholders, Rocket Internet, which is an incubator of young business ideas here in Germany. This is seen as a bit of a barometer for the whole tech startup scene in Germany, which has not been in too rosy a situation during the last 1 or 2 years. So this positive IPO is, of course, good news for the whole sector here in Germany.
Now, despite that positive IPO, looking behind you there, I can see that the DAX is actually not looking very good. And, of course, first half of the year is gone. Just wondering, has it been a good one for the market? And I would also want you to lead us into the second half of the year.
Well, it's been an extremely good year for equities here in Germany, but all over Europe. The German DAX, the index, which is represented right here behind me, gained more than 8% since the beginning of this year. The Eurostoxx 50 index, which comprises the 50 largest companies of the Eurozone, gained around about 6% since the beginning of January. And even in Britain, the FTSE 100 index gained a little bit more than 4% since the beginning of January, and this despite all those concerns which have to do with Brexit. So equities did really well, but in this fact alone, of course, lies some skepticism for people here. If you ask them how the second half of this year will happen, most people here are convinced that things cannot continue the way they were during the first 6 months. And the reason people quote have mostly to do with the geopolitical environment. Let's not forget that this increase on the stock market had a lot to do with Donald Trump and with the bet that his administration would bring tax cuts, would bring infrastructure spending, and especially the recent weeks have shown that for Mr. Trump, the things in Washington have become a bit more complicated. So, of course, the question here is, will those policies in the United States really materialize? At the end of next week, we will have the big G20 meeting where Mr. Trump will meet Angela Merkel and many other, government leaders. This is an event that many people are looking towards. Probably there's going to be a lot of discussion about, trade policies and protectionism and stuff like this. This is what's on people's minds here, and this is what makes some of them concerned.
Right, Conrad, we will look forward to that G20 meeting. And, of course, it's been a wonderful half year, not just in Frankfurt, of course, here in Nigeria, and, of course, working with you there, Conrad. And I hope to see you again next week. Enjoy the weekend.